Hi, thank you. And thank you for joining us on another segment of New England Veterans Liberty House Veterans Corner. Before I introduce you to my next guest, I just want to take a moment of silence, and I'm going to dedicate this show to one of our brothers that unfortunately took his life a couple of weeks ago, Specialist Frank Bika. So if you could just join me in a moment of silence, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So my next guest, and I appreciate so much for you gracing us with your presence, Senator Barbara Italian. Welcome to my show, and thank you for agreeing to be our guest today.
My pleasure.
You know, before we start talking about all the accomplishments that the Senator does, I'm going to read out a few things that you're part of the committees that you are. So you're a chair or Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. Yep.
Chair on Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure. Vice Chair for Joint Committee on Elder Affairs. That's
near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. Vice Chair for Senate Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. Joint Committee on Higher Education. That's one of my causes. Joint Committee on Healthcare Financing. That's another important topic, obviously, and they all are. Joint Committee on Education. Joint Committee on Community Development and Small Businesses. And Senate Committee on Redistricting. Did I miss anything?
No, that's the 10 committees that I'm involved with, yes.
Any more? Do you have more time for a few more?
It's a lot.
You're
it's a
spreading
lot.
yourself out thin.
Yeah.
I know. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Really.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Senator.
Okay.
Please.
Sure.
Where you from, and what inspired you to run for office? I know you used to work for was it Merrimack Valley Elder Services at one point?
Yep. So I have Lawrence roots. My grandparents on both sides landed here from Canada.
Nice.
Half were French Canadian, half were Irish Canadian. Came to work in the mills 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And then
Tough
my
time.
dad, yep. And my dad grew up here in Lawrence, up on Tower Hill. Went to Central Catholic, went to St. Anne's School, which is where the French Canadian kids went when they were little.
Nice.
English was his second language. He learned English when he attended school. He was native French speaking.
Okay.
My dad served in World War II in the Navy.
That's
Signed
right, you did
himself
mention that.
up as a 17-year-old.
Thank you.
And served, and
That's
as a result was able to use the GI Bill to go to Boston College and get a college education and a master's in physics.
Nice.
And become an FBI agent for his career.
Good for him.
And so I'm
Good
one
for
of
him.
8 children. Grew up in Andover, and I entered the legislature back in 2003 as a state representative, not representing Lawrence at that point. I had 2 other major cities, Methuen and Haverhill, and then I had 4 towns as part of my House district. So I know, of course, the Veterans Outreach Center very, very much from my work representing Haverhill.
Sure, yeah, VNOC.
And then I worked for the state treasurer for 2 years. I did 2 years of disability and elder policy, and then landed in the Senate 2 years ago.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It seems like you have a host of experiences along the way, and it suits you perfectly in this this endeavor that you're going for. And one of the things that I think that I want to bring back, first of all, thank your father, but I guess he
Deceased, yeah.
Well, I mean, again, because we don't talk a lot about World War II veterans, and to me, I consider World War II veterans to be national treasures of our country. There's very few left. But the ones that you do come across, it's just, to me, every time I'm in their presence, I'm at awe. Because they're the ones that really paved the way for me and a lot of the veterans that are coming after me. So thank you for that.
My dad was a naval aviator.
Pretty cool.
And his entire group perished in a plane crash. He happened to be not feeling well that day.
Wow,
and
that must have
stayed
been tough.
behind, and his entire company,
That
perished.
must have been
So
tough.
he's never forgotten that.
Yeah, that guilt.
we would hear about that every year.
Yeah, that's guilt. Yeah, that stays with you for a very long time.
Right.
Yeah. But thank you anyway, and thank you also for putting yourself out there. I know that running for public office is not easy, really. I mean, it's tough. It's very rewarding, but you put yourself out there for everybody to pick you apart for the things you do or don't do.
Right.
So good for you.
It's definitely challenging,
It
but I'm energized by the thought of what can be
Exactly.
and what can be accomplished.
Exactly.
And so there's no doubt that it's exhausting work
It is.
and that there are some folks you're never going to please,
Yeah.
but you have to have a vision working with others of what you think you can do that will make things better for people.
Exactly, and I always tell everybody around that I associate myself with, it's like we have a saying in the military that you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I say that constantly, and I sound like a broken record, but it's true, because as a veterans agency and director, I'm only one link to that chain, and I think if we all just link each other to and collaborate and bounce each other's ideas off of one each other, then I think we'll be able to accomplish so much more. Yes, like anything else, we're never going to be able to please everybody, but we'll try to please the majority, and that's where we're at right now.
And
Senator, I wanted to get into a couple questions again,
Sure.
very simple questions. And one of the things that as you saw in the beginning of the show, I dedicated the show to Specialist Frank Bika. Too many of our brothers and sisters are taking their own lives here in American soil. It's just heartbreaking. We're having more deaths here on American soil by our own military men and women's hands than we do in a battlefield. There's something wrong when we're losing more men and women here in our country versus a battlefield. And I understand regardless of what situation you're in, losing a life is horrible as it is, one life. But I understand in a battlefield, I think that I could digest that a little bit easier, because we know that's casualties of war, and that's what war is, and let's be realistic. But here in American soil, it's heartbreaking to see. And I didn't serve with Specialist Frank Bika, but as a brother veteran, I feel that pain because I could be there, anybody else could be there. What do you think about that, and what are your thoughts about trying to bring this grave issue more to light? I know that it's out there when a veteran takes his life, but then it's put or shoved around wherever it's shoved up, and then comes back up when there's actually another veteran that takes his life. What is it you think that we could do to not eradicate this? Because I don't think we're ever going to stop it. But what can we do to maybe, in your opinion, minimize it? I know I have my own opinions on what we could do, but I just wanted to share your thoughts about what you think about that.
Sure. So the first thing I think we can do is have more conversations and acknowledge when people are taking their lives. Suicide is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. I was a Samaritan suicide volunteer for 3 years here in Lawrence out of the Grace Episcopal Church when it was there in the early 80s. I joined it because 2 of my classmates in high school had committed suicide, and one of their moms started Samaritans up here. So job number 1 is to talk about this. And make sure that people understand that it's not a taboo, that it's okay to talk about it. So that's job number 1 in my mind. Job number 2 is to figure out the root cause. Is it PTSD? Is it survivor's guilt? Is it having difficulty acclimating back from a highly structured environment that is the military? Having someone come back, and is it because they don't have a job? Is it because they are still really suffering the post-traumatic effects? There's so many causative reasons why it could be happening, but we need to sort of unpeel that onion for each person, because everyone's different as to what's going on. We have a mental health system that's in disarray.
It is.
The public system, the private system, and within the public system, I would say both the state mental health system and the federal, which of course is the Veterans Mental Health System. So making sure that folks have access to treatment, have support, that their family has support. So that gentleman that took his life, his family, if he has family, will never forget that. And it places them in a higher than average risk category to take their own lives as well.
I didn't even know that. Thank you for sharing that.
So there's all sorts of root causes, and so we really need to look at each individual, have them not feel afraid to seek assistance, support. If people are employed, sometimes they're afraid to come forward because they're afraid it's going to reflect negatively on them in their job, or they're going to lose their job. We need to have really access on demand for mental health treatment. And again, each person is different as to what they respond to.
And ma'am, Senator, and again, that's one of the things that I always talk about. I think you hit it on the nail, right? It's like taboo for us to talk about suicide amongst our veterans, but you know what, it's happening, and we can't just turn a blind eye to it. We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep exposing it. We have to get out there, and that's why I'll use this platform as much as I can to talk about it, because I think by us not talking about it, I think it's going to go away. It's not going to go away. So let's just face it head on. Let's just face it head on. One of the things that I was thinking, and I'd just like to get your opinion, is that I'm going to go ahead and take the initiative. That's another mission I'm going to be taking on. Like I have enough to do, but I felt once I met the Pika family, which I had them today, I felt I had to do something. Enough is enough. So my idea is we sat down with a couple of veterans and said, I think, let's come up with a pilot program. Let's try to get a facility in here. It doesn't have to be big. The size of the studio, smaller. Let's put a cot. Let's put a TV. Let's put the phone there. And let's put veterans in there that been through situations like this or understand how to pick out those cues when someone's coming out. It's like the concept of a women's battered shelter, right? And it's open up 24 hours a day. Women go in there. They could talk with someone privately. They could, obviously have a discussion of what happened, call whatever social workers you need, call whatever paramedics or first responders you need. And that's what I want to do. I don't think when I approach it and I lobby this, I don't want money thrown at this. What happens is, well, money needs to be thrown at this. But what I'm talking about on a larger scale, like grants for nonprofits, I want to try to see if we could get a facility, small facility, and then get enough funds to be able to man that, 24 hours a day. So when a veteran comes into those doors, they know that veteran that coming through that door is at his end wits, and okay, let's just talk to you, let's be calm, and at the same time, I'll call first responders. But don't have it overseen by nonprofit organizations, because once you have it, in my opinion, once nonprofit organizations start getting into it, it's going to be about the money and not more about the people. Now, maybe you heard it or you haven't, Senator, but a lot of veterans agencies out here, they don't like to play nice with each other. It's because they want to be that white Trojan horse, I want to be, and I work with 4 or 5 other veterans agencies, and I wish I could collaborate with everybody else, and now that's the type of person I am. It's like I'm only one head, so let's all combine our resources. Man, we could be a powerful source for our veterans. And every 5 of these agencies that I work with all the time, they're just phenomenal agencies. I call, hey, I need help. Okay, here you go, JT, what do you need? I call another, hey, yep, whatever you need. But there's other agencies where I've called that have earmarked money going to them, or Department of Veterans Services or SSSVF money, that just don't like to, for some reason, collaborate with other veterans agencies. But I just think that's wrong across the table. I'm not going to mention any names, but if we bring something of that sort here, and let's say Department of Veterans Services used to have a SHARP team. I don't know if you remember the SHARP team they had for Department of Veterans Services, which was a crisis team that went out. They no longer have that. The VA was sponsoring that, but they no longer have that. So they have what's called the SAVE team now. Have Department of Veterans Services oversee that. Just one office. Let's start off in Massachusetts, have one office. If they can't oversee it, pass it on to the Veteran Service Officer. They have stuff to do, we get it. But if they're overseeing it and not just one executive director from a veterans agency that's going to be overseeing all these, I think it is going to go much further. I think it's going to be more about than the veteran. So what do you think of that idea of me bringing in something of that sort? And again, I'm not to put you in the spot, just in general, I think that we need to approach this in that manner. We need to put something that's going to be in place for 24 hours 7. If a veteran is walking out in the street, so he's dropped off on the train, he's dropped off on the bus, he's sleeping, and just at his ends, just doesn't want to live anymore, go to Zewana places that are available. I think the chances of that person staying underneath the bridge and taking his own life will drastically diminish.
Yeah, so it's a question of scalability, right? So to start as a pilot, it would make sense to try to find a place in a downtown area and have sort of a walk-in, drop-in center type place. The challenge would then be how you scale it up statewide if it works well, right? I like the idea, conversely, also of the SAVE team that you're talking about. I remember when I volunteered for Samaritans, there were times when I was dispatched out to go talk with someone in person as opposed to on the phone. So I think there's a lot of ways that you could approach this. But I agree, I think veteran to veteran, because it's an experience that the rest of us cannot pretend to know, because we've not been in the situation. And I'd also like to further interject, because something I've been working on, I have a woman who is a state police widow to suicide in Andover, Janice McCarthy. And so I'm working now with two House members in Boston. One is a retired police chief in Salem, Mass, Paul Tucker, and a retired state policeman as well. Because also with your veterans, you see some of them entering into police and fire.
Yes, a lot of veterans are into law enforcement.
And again, you get the PTSD at play, and it can culminate in suicide or in other ways as well, right? And drinking, drug abuse, whatever. So there are many different side effects of PTSD. Suicide being the final and the most drastic, but there are other touchstones along the way, right? You know, if you find you're abusing alcohol, abusing drugs, abusing your family, right? Because you don't know where to put that.
You don't know where to channel it.
That anger, that frustration, that whatever it is. So I think that the idea of having veterans counseling veterans and supporting them is super important.
I do too. I mean, we talk the same talk, we walk the same walk, and I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to do it on our own. We have a couple other executive directors that are going to jump aboard, and we have a couple of funeral directors that are going to help us out with it as well.
And the other issue, of course, is that because the VA hospitals are few and far between, for many, many folks, you know, if they know they need help, getting to the VA can be very difficult.
It's tough.
Right?
Well, they have the oh my God, it's a soldier's choice. I think it's a soldier's choice, and my apologies if I can't recall right now, which if you're in an area where I think you're 30 mile, if you're in an area with a 30-mile radius of a VA, and then you don't have really much option but to go visit the VA. However, if you live outside that radius, you have a choice to go now, and I think it was passed a couple of years ago. You have now to go to other doctors, and also a private, civilian hospital, and the VA will cover it.
Which is great.
Let me get to the next page. We don't have much time here. Quick question, what are the other veterans organizations that you are involved with here in the Merrimack Valley or in your district? I know that you've been a champion for us every single time we needed you a call. You've done a couple of fundraisers for us, and you always keep us in your mind. So we appreciate that very much, and all our veterans appreciate it. The day that you went to visit us, they couldn't stop talking about it for a couple of weeks. So it's good. No, they just thought that they finally put a name with the face, and they finally seen, because you've only been the second politician really that's visited our facility, which is kind of sad. But you're
I
one
wanted
of them.
to see what you do.
Yeah, it's one of them.
It's important for me in my job to see what's done,
and
what folks are doing, so that I can feel good about and explain the work that's being done, with the state dollars that are going in.
Exactly. How are you going to fight for us if you don't know what we do?
And so, we did the toiletry drive because we had been out at your veterans outreach last summer, and we realized that you were giving out toiletries to folks that couldn't afford to buy them, right?
And that was huge.
It was a choice between food, heat, or their personal stuff.
And all that other stuff. So that was a huge help, believe me. I think that I get about 4 or 5 containers full from you guys. That's one day, and then I think the following week, Sean came back with a bunch of other bags.
So we did the drive.
Stuff.
We did it through the schools. So we had the public schools give in towards something they. So it's sort of a teaching moment to explain to the kids where it's going and why it's needed. What's the role of a veteran? What have they done for your country? And it gives the kids a chance to help in some tangible way. And so, the toiletry drive was great.
It was. It really was.
So I work with my VSOs in all 4 communities: Andover, Drake, Tewksbury, Lawrence. So,
and I'm sorry to ask, it's my ignorance or my apologies. I haven't met the Veteran Service Officer for the city of Andover. What's his name?
Right. So that's Michael Burke.
Michael Burke.
Grew up with me, went to school with me.
Was he assigned to that post not too long ago?
Yeah, we had a long-term gentleman, Mr. Doherty, who retired.
Yes.
And so Michael Burke's been on the job maybe 7 or 8 years now, but he's a Gulf War I veteran himself.
Operation Desert Shield.
Yes, yep. Okay. And he's done a great job with trying to assemble books and honor the different Korean and World War II and Vietnam vets. So he researches and writes their stories and presents about them, and does a really nice
job. Does he go
job.
to schools and do that?
He does,
really?
yeah. He assembles
Good for
books,
him.
and then they put a focus on different veterans every year on either Memorial or Veterans Day.
Good for him.
So he's
Good
great,
initiative.
very easy to work with.
get out
Obviously, I work with our Lawrence,
Mr. Jamie
ESL,
Melendez, my
Jamie
cousin.
Melendez. And then I also work with my two ladies in Drake and Tewksbury. They're relatively new over there.
I was just going to say that.
They're both
Yeah.
women, and they both do a great job as well.
What's the Drake at VSO's name again?
Don't
I
ask
I
me.
know, no, it's okay. That's
she
okay.
just
'Cause I
replaced a long-serving gentleman who'd been there for
Yeah, and
decades.
Tewksbury as well. There was
Yeah,
another young
and
lady
so-
there. And we did some pretty good work together, and my Lord, I am so sorry, but I have
Yeah,
a brain
and we
cramp
do
right
a
now.
lot too. The Drake has a very active American Legion.
And
They
Tewksbury.
do all sorts of stuff. Like I'm going to an installation of their members this coming Saturday. They do the flag burnings around Memorial Day with
yep, the
the
proper-
scouts.
yeah, yep.
They do the flags as Lawrence does on the
Replace 'em.
graves, and and Tewksbury also has a whole patriotic committee that does a number of
They
events
do.
throughout the year.
Yeah, they do. I'm sure you're on it.
So I work with all of them.
Good to
Yep.
go.
And also, of course, the Veterans Outreach Center in
Haverhill.
Haverhill because of the wonderful work that they do
Yeah,
as well.
they do a lot of work in there. And
Yep.
we partnered up a few times with some of the issues that we have here locally with our veterans, and they have been able to help us out with some housing and some financial assistance. Actually, they also donated, veterans assisting veterans, and I'm sure you heard of them. John McDonald,
Right.
they donated
And
to.
is he the North Andover VSO now?
No, no. He actually hosts the WCAP radio station
Yes,
in
yep.
Lowell.
Okay.
But he's also the president for the Veterans Assisting Veterans, or president or director. My apologies, pal. But
Okay.
we partnered up with them, and they were a huge part of helping out the Peacock family for the funeral. VNOC, also another one, they donated towards the funeral and the burial. Military Friends and Family, Sarah Sweeney and her husband Sweeney, just phenomenal people. Their organization is great. And then we had I think there was another Veterans Helping Hands assistant. I think they're out of Lowell. They also, those are more so the individuals that I work with around Merrimack Valley, but they're all wonderful people. So one thing is that I noticed that reading through some of the bills that you either sponsored or put up yourself, and I don't know the whole politics structure, but there is a lot in here that has to deal with disabilities. Can you tell
Right.
us why you're so passionate
Sure.
about that? And I think it's just a great cause, because a lot of people tend to forget about our disabled, not just
Right.
veterans, but in general our civilians as well.
Yeah, so I'm the parent of a son who's now 26 years old. His
God
name is
bless.
Rudy. He's
bless.
on the autism spectrum. And I was sharing this at a senior housing building yesterday. You know, when he was 5 years old, he was diagnosed. And at the time, I had small children,
give
a
me
1 and a
two.
3-year-old as well at home. And it was very, very difficult to understand his disability, to find out what was out there, which wasn't much back in the mid-90s. And so I ended up sort of step by step
advocate for your
setting
son.
up a support group at Merrimack College, where I went to college, founding an organization to help with his disability, just kind of being very hands-on, not just with my child, but with all those others who weren't in a position to do for their children. So over the 8 years I was in the state legislature, began setting up a system for folks with autism that's really the envy of the nation. It's really the best system in the whole country.
So it has gone across the states, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
That
so
was
we've
set
set up a whole department for autism. We've set up protection in the education system from bullying, making sure that people get the support that
Pretty
they
cool.
need from teachers. We've been able to get private insurance and now Mass Health to cover
cover it?
behavior therapy. We've done a lot over the years. Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned to me, and I see that with Lisa, you telling me that a lot of the kids in Asperger's or kids with that disease is they're very, very intelligent kids. And I see
Right.
that with Lisa. Lisa's a great kid, and every time I talk to her, she's just she's just so inspiring, and she's so motivated, and I could tell every time I talk to her, just her intelligence level, you know, intelligence level. And a lot of people will see you with disabilities and just try to write you off, but that's not the case. That's really not the case.
So you're talking about Daniel and Lisa Ratchick, who have started Asperger Works here in Lawrence. They cut the ribbon last week.
Yeah, we were there. Well, I was there a little late.
Yep, we were there.
We got there.
Yeah, the challenge for folks on the high functioning end of the autism spectrum is that they carry very unique skill sets. And they're very, very individual, what they're interested in, what they're really good at, and the challenge is to help them find and keep jobs utilizing their strengths. So for my son, it's really interesting. Math and science is not his thing, but he has this ability to assimilate information at an incredible level. So he loves music and history and things like that, and he can take and tell you the roots of every single genre of music, who were the major influences, who are the folks that spilled over and started other genres of music, and it's just in his head, like you know, it's unbelievable. And so his challenge is, how do you use that? How do you make that a marketable skill? So he's plugging away at getting his associate's degree, and we're hoping he may get over to Emerson and end up, you know, being like having a radio station or something like that. But it's sort of matching up the skill set to do something using that incredible ability.
Yeah, being able to give them the platform to be utilized their intelligence in a way that normally maybe you and I won't be able to use it, but give them. And I know where you're going. We get to set these kids up for success and not for failure. So leave
play
them,
to the strengths.
Put enough resources out there to make them successful and help them. Because I see, I'm telling you, it's like everything I was reading, I was like, oh,
there's been a lot of legislation over the last decade.
It's something that's really near and dear to you.
Yeah,
so,
it really is.
It's a good cause.
And I really have collaborated with a number of the House members and worked with a lot of experts in the field and a lot of parents. And to be successful, you have to really seek information from everybody.
You do.
And then sort of bring it together and agree on a path to a direction to go. And that's what we did with the Autism Commission, which I chaired for 4 years. We set up a 10-year plan for autism. And we were able to we filed 12 bills to try to accomplish what we set out to do. We got 8 of those passed into a bill within 2 years of filing the bills. So it's not just about gathering information, it's doing the work of informing yourself, but executing it and making sure it gets implemented the way you hope. You know, because some folks are great at ideas but can never quite get them into action.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be all of the above.
To go out there and execute it. Senator, they're giving me a cue here to go on break real quick, so we're just going to go ahead and take a couple seconds here to regroup, and we'll be back with you.
Great.